So I believe in servant leadership. As a leader of organizations, and I've had international experience with that, a leader's responsibility is to provide resources to their people so they can be successful. So that's my whole job, is providing them the resources so they can be successful. That way we can get people elected and maybe unify our party here a little bit. Yeah, so unity, there seems to be split factions here in the party, and people aren't willing to compromise at all. We agree with almost everybody with 80 to 85%. You know, even our spouses and our family, if we're lucky to get 80 or 85%. So I think if we concentrate on what we have in common and fight those fights, maybe the other stuff will come along at a later date. So bringing those people together is a priority. We have to expand our base. So that's one way to do it. So that's how I see it. Transparency. There's a lot of things that we should be doing to be a transparent organization. And one of those things is the executive committee meetings should be open to all delegates. They should be able to log in and be able to observe what is going on and listen. So with that said, we can set that up in the portal that I'm developing with my team inside the MNGOP website, so they can do that. So that includes all the parts of the meeting, the financials. There's only one thing, is that when we're talking specifically about personnel issues, that needs to be private for privacy reasons. And as an HR manager, I know how that works. And plus, I've had a security clearance for 30 years. So keeping information confidential, I understand how the process works. Yeah, there's other things about transparency. Let's just cover what transparency is. It's about being open about how you conduct business. And I think if we do that, people will start to trust what's coming out of the organization, and that will increase the base. It'll increase donations. So it has a trickle effect doing that. So at the state central meeting and the state meeting that we had earlier this year, there were delegates waiting to be heard at the conventions, and numerous times they were told that it's out of order. And then towards the end of the meeting, the chair went from the treasurer was talking about information that he had, and then they went straight, instead of going to open forum, they went straight to adjourn, and there's 20 delegates waiting to be heard. I think one thing in our bylaws or constitution that needs to change is that no meeting can adjourn or convention when there are delegates waiting to be heard. So the chair does not run the convention, the delegates do. So, and I think that's one thing that really needs to change. So first of all, there's been rumblings about people want to get rid of the caucus process. So what that does is then, so a grassroots person or somebody who's new, who doesn't have that many connections, but they have a good message, they're principled, the delegates want them, but they don't have the money. So if you eliminate the caucus process and go straight to primary, only the candidate with the most money is going to win every time. So that's not in alignment with what the people want. So anybody that talks about getting rid of the caucus, you should question them on that, because that's not the path we need to follow. It seems that we have a problem supporting our endorsed candidates. There's candidates that have been selected by the people, by the delegates, and for some reason, other people, whether it's elected officials or whether it's people with financial support, are supporting unendorsed candidates against who the people choose at the endorsement conventions. And so I know there was a problem with that with one of the counties 2 years ago. And so to rectify that situation, everybody needs to be on board. When the people speak and they say that this is our candidate, that has to be supported. And if you go around that system and support an unendorsed candidate, like if you're an elected official, or like I said, if you're a fundraiser of some type and you provide support to an unendorsed candidate against an endorsed candidate, there has to be consequences for those actions. And right now there's really no consequences set. So people just they think they can do what they want. They can ignore the will of the people, and we can't have that. There was one instance this year where they wound up having to nullify the caucus results. And so there was paperwork wasn't filled out correctly. I can't see throwing out a whole caucus just because of some paperwork. I guess what I would have done is I would have had a team of folks go up there from the MNGOP, whether it was the executive committee or whatever, and I would have spent at least a Saturday or maybe a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon bringing in every precinct, verifying the PCRC forms that were filled out, and if there was any errors in them, that all the delegates would be there and we could correct those right on the spot. To me, it would have been a 2-day process, and we would have had a valid caucus. But instead, a committee was put together, and by the time that was all done, it was really too late at that point. So, we did caucus night was on a Tuesday. If we would have had all the delegates come back from the precincts on that Saturday, we probably, if we brought a team of, 8 people up there, we probably could have got that done in one day. And then all the paperwork would have been signed. The precinct chairs would have signed the paperwork, because that was one other thing about the paperwork is down in the bottom. It was supposed to be signed by the secretary and the precinct chair. Well, what the form, when they printed them out, the forms that came from the MNGOP said convener. So, but I knew better. So, I knew that my precinct chairs needed to sign that. So I just crossed out convener and put precinct chair. So I don't know how many people did that. But to me, if forms are coming out from on top, that they need to make sure that they're in compliance with the law, because the precinct chair is the only one who can sign off on those forms, and the secretary by state law. Personal contact, if the leader of the organization would have went up there, taken charge, and got the people together and say, look, we need to fix this paperwork or it's going to be invalid, rather than just invalidating it. I look for solutions. So in the military, my 20 plus years in the military, it's about solutions. No is not the right answer. You got to figure out a way to do it. So that's what my military taught me. I talked earlier about the portal. So in that portal, people will have to log in, and that'll be for delegates and BPOU officers. They'll be able to log into that portal. And when they log into that portal, they consent to an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So they can't be sharing the information that's in as far as the delegates go. They can't share other delegates' information, but they can certainly chat. I'm planning on having a chat room in there and a place where the delegates can actually talk to each other, because right now that's a hard process. I didn't even know who all the delegates were, and I'm one of them. And to try to get 25% in order to call a convention or to call a meeting is almost impossible. And I have to jump through hoops in order to get that to happen. So we need to be able to communicate freely with each other. And by not doing that, it limits our ability to function correctly. I'm not really sure what their process is. It seems to work slowly. But like I said, with the portal, we could give access to candidates. Once they've qualified, you can give access to the candidates to go in there and look at. And then by going into the portal, they've already agreed to the NDA. And there should be free access to it. So I know in a couple of cases that we had this past election cycle that some candidates didn't get the data at all. And so, I don't know what the circumstances were behind that, but if we're as a delegation, if we're going to be voting to secure some kind of an endorsement, that those people need to be able to contact us. It just makes sense. I mean, everybody needs to speak. So if the delegate is running or a candidate is running and you have agreed that he can run or she, then you need to provide them with the resources that they're supposed to have in a timely manner. But if you have the portal, you can just grant access to that candidate. They can go in there and look and see who the delegates and alternates and voters are. And that can lose voter rolls. So I plan on putting the voter rolls we just had from 2024 now. We've already been paid for. We're just waiting to receive it. So all the database for the entire, everybody who voted in the state of Minnesota will be in there. And that way BPOUs can access it. Delegates can access it so they know who voted and who they need to concentrate on. And so if you compare that against the 2020 and 2022 list, you'll see who voted in 2020 and didn't vote this year. And that way you know who you can target. And that's part of the precinct strategy that works so well. And that's what I'm going to be pushing in my administration. Well, that's part of cleaning up our voter rolls. That's one of the things that needs to happen. There's counties, I know the MNGOP, they sued Hennepin County for not using our list for election judges. Well, and that's great. I'm glad they did that because it needed to be done. But there was other counties. I know Carver County was one. I know Benton County was another one. I know Stearns County was another one where they were having the same problems. I was hoping that they would make one big lawsuit and do it that way. Let me give you an example of that. So I've been talking with Omega for America, Jay Valentine over there, and he just, as an example, he said he had data from Hennepin County from 2022. Well, they crunch data and they do database management, and that's what they do. So they looked at how many people between the ages of 100 and 180 that voted in 2022, and there was 177 of them. Between 100 and 180 that voted. And then another matrix he had was that people that voted that 30 people or more voted from the same address, almost 8,000 voters that had 30 or more people registered to vote at one address. And on his link, he could click on the location, and most of them were warehouses, businesses. There was no apartment buildings. So that's almost 8,000 votes. So I'm hoping that maybe between, that organization and maybe some of the work that a few others are doing, Rick Weibel, for example, maybe we can clean up the voter rolls. I think that's one of the big problems. We have to ensure that only U.S. citizens are voting in elections. And how do we monitor that? So, and I'm going to call on the legislators. You should already have legislation drafted. So when we get the trifecta in 2026, that goes on, that becomes law where you have to prove citizenship in order to vote. Yeah. So the data that I was talking about, then it has to be presented to whatever county, that is. Of course, one massive injection would go to the Secretary of State to clean up his voter rolls, but then each county needs to be responsible to turn in their, our supporters, the MNGOP people, the BPOU need to go to your county commissioners and say, here, these are what the anomalies or the things that are wrong with our voters. This person here, he's 137 years old. I think the oldest person in the world is 119. So, something's wrong and that should be an easy fix. And another thing we need to do too is right now you need to start the paperwork to get the auditors as elected officials. Because what happens? They're an employee. Who do they work for? They work for the county commission. How is that not a conflict of interest? They need to be an elected official. In the county that I'm in, My auditor, we have a great relationship. I got to watch everything from the minute the ballots were delivered, the mail-in ballots were delivered to the courthouse, to the auditor's office, and then they're separated. They will go into the vault. They're sealed with the tamper-evident tape, serial number tamper-evident tape. And then when they come out of there and they go to the ballot board, I was there for that. I watched the whole process. I was there election night. I was there at the PER. I witnessed all that stuff. If everybody ran if all the counties ran their elections like Denise does up in Todd County, we wouldn't have any problems with elections. So that's why it's so important to have an auditor elected. Unfortunately, it takes lawyers and money to do that kind of stuff. Now I know President Trump has announced that any federal elections, federal people are on the ballot, that citizenship proof is going to be required. So but that don't help us in 2026 because the Democrats still control, they're not going to pass anything to help, right. to help election integrity. And that was why one of the reasons, one of the laws still on the books is called guarding the ballots. And I know Royce White's campaign and some of his supporters, that was a big push because that puts you in the room from start to finish, guarding the ballots. That means you can be there, you can stand guard next to the facility wherever it's being stored, the ballots are being stored, and nobody can get in there without you seeing it. That's his interpretation of the law, and I think if there was a different attorney general or a different secretary of state, which is what we're pushing for in 2026, that would not be the case because he violated the law. I mean, even the Supreme Court ruled last year that what he did in 2022, some of the things he did when it came to mail-in and absentee ballots was unconstitutional. So why wasn't he removed from office at that point? You violate your Constitution, you violate your oath. You violate your oath, you can be removed from office, but nobody did anything about it. Well, like I said earlier, some of the stuff that we've been talking about today, we don't really know what's going on. So one of the things is as the MNGOP, I believe that we should have a person in the gallery, in the House, and the Senate when they're in session. And they will be responsible for reporting on what's going on the floor and then posting daily on our website what's happening. That way the electorate knows what's going on and they can contact our legislatures if there's something that they feel passionate about. That way, because the legislators right now, they're so busy when they're in session and they send out the weekly stuff, but by the end of the week, it's too late in a lot of cases and they're just too busy. So we have to take on that role. That's our job, is to help our elected people. So, I feel if we do that and have those people blog as well as post stuff, we need to expand into our younger markets, because all of us are getting old. Right. That's another thing too. So there needs to be a calendar in there, and that calendar in there is going to be, so the BPOU officers will be able to log in and update all the events they have coming up. And that way there's one place where I can go. If let's just say, I'm running for a Senate a Senate that has 6 counties. Well, that's 6 fairs. It's 6 parades, 6 different county parades that are going on, which is about 20. I know in my county alone, there's 12. Like I said, we need to outreach to the younger people. And that's what they do. They're on Telegram. They're on, they follow bloggers. That's what they do. And we're alienating them. So we need to outreach. There's a lot of outreach we need to be doing, just like with our affiliates. The affiliates that we have. I talk to a lot of those delegates and they feel like they've been pushed aside. So one of the things within the first week, of my administration is I plan to meet with the delegates, put them all in one room, and then what can we as the MNGOP do to support you? So the rally that was held down at the Capitol on the couple days before the election, I think there was 18 or 19 nonprofits there. And why aren't we working with them people? You know, they have reach that we dream about. So, you know, I think bringing those people in, we just have so much stuff in common, but because we're so focused on, this person, you know, they don't like this, so I'm not going to work with them at all. And we can't think like that. It's about unity and where's our common ground? What can we fight on together? Let's get more people to vote. Let's get younger people involved. Let's raise some money. Right. Well, I think the state is red anyway, but what's happened is because voters have become disenfranchised, they're not voting. So I can tell you in 2022, there was 269,000 Republicans who did not vote. Over a quarter million. And if even half of those would have voted, we would have had the trifecta. Even half. If half would have voted, we'd have had the trifecta. So I kind of blame ourselves because we didn't get the message out there and everybody was counting on the red wave. And we can't count on anything because they're going to do everything they can to trip us up. So I had asked for in order to compete at the CEO level of an organization, you have to have access to certain information, in order to make an appropriate plan. And, they felt that wasn't appropriate yet at this time. So, with my team, I've developed a marketing plan, from the ground up. We need to use artificial intelligence along with, cause that's the best way to make money nowadays. You just set up the parameters for AI and it really does the work for you. And we're not using that technology. When you tie that into CRM, customer relationship management, that's our business really. Our customers are other Republicans and other voters. So if we have a management program for that, you know, it's relatively, minuscule cost as compared to somebody's salary or something like that. So like I said, we need to revamp our website to make it user friendly and grant access to people who need to have it, to anybody who needs access. We have to change our processes. There's things, like I said, in our constitution that need to change. So we don't, again, disenfranchise delegates and voters. So everybody should be focused on one thing. We got to get the auditors on the ballot in 2026, and that you do that through your county. You have to do that through the county. It's not something we can do at state level. So you need to petition your county commissioners to have that put on the ballot. And you're going to need signatures. I think you need 1,200. I think it's based on population. But the commissioners tried it in Morrison County here this year, and the people voted it down because there's some people over there who know what's going on. And so they took charge and they stopped it. We'll have a how-to section, in the MNGOP website too. So how do you get the auditor on the ballot? How do you do this and how do you do that? Best practices. It's going to be a wealth of information for people that we just haven't had before. Election integrity. That's another thing that we can do right away. We can get them voter rolls cleaned up. You know, it's going to take work. It's going to take lawyers. We're going to have to, I'm already working with some. And like I said, we need to be looking for the experts. So who are the experts? Omega for America is the expert. Rick Weibel's an expert. There's a lot of experts around who have better data than the MNGOP, which is, I don't understand that at all. We should be the place that they come to for data. We should have the most accurate data. Well, they've been losing for quite a while. And people in outstate and CDs 1, 7, and 8, and some of 6 have been living the luxury. Like in CD 7, we're 71% Republican. In my county, we're 76%. So I know that whoever we endorse is going to win. So, and they don't have that luxury. So I think we need to outstate. I'd like to see the outstate folks get more involved in the cities. And then we need to find candidates that can win, because there's some precincts down, or there's some House districts down there where they don't even run a Republican candidate. Right. And we can't have that. Right. I don't care if we're running your pet dog. I don't care. We're going to run somebody. We can't just let them, So I encourage all the BPOUs to find a candidate and do it right now, because 26 is right around the corner. Well, like I said, anything that supports educating people, because that's one of the problems, is people just don't know. Being in the military, I spent, 15 of my 20 years training people. And then after I got out of the military, I also worked at Camp Ripley, for a number of years as well, training people. So training is important. There's other people on my team who are professional trainers as well. We're already working on that. So we're working on a lot of stuff. Like I said, my team's been going for about 3 months now. We've handled different projects, which is another one. I don't know why we're not involved with some of the organizations more heavily. I know donations, you have to be careful there with that kind of thing. But as far as help, community, like we had a group, We the People Are Coming USA. They've made a half a dozen trips out east to the hurricane ravaged areas. I personally went on one of the trips. And so, I think we need to be better stewards and brothers and sisters and serve God. We have to use the tools that God has given us to make life better for everybody. To me, that's, it's servant leadership again. It comes back to that. So, if we all serve each other, I think we'll be a lot better off.